As enemies gain access to more and more sources of dangerous elemental ailments, it's more important than ever to get a 100% chance to avoid elemental ailments or some other way of dealing with them into your build. The easiest way is just play a raider. That way, instead of needing a 100% chance, you only need 50. But we can't all be raiders, so what about something a little more generic? Well, you could run Purity of Elements. Purity of Elements will give you a bunch of resists and make you completely immune. This includes things like Brittle, Scorch, and Sap, which, as alt ailments, don't have natural immunities on flasks. And that's all great. But what if you don't want to use a 50% aura, and you don't want to be a raider? I'd say you're probably just being picky, and you should take what you've got. But since I know that's not really a solution, the next best thing I can offer is crafting Elemental Ailment Avoidance on your gear, which is something that I've done for a long time. You start by taking a pair of Shaper Boots with Tier 1 chance to avoid, you then elevate that Tier 1 chance to avoid so it goes up to 50%, and you then Awaken or Orbit together, and you get 50% chance to avoid Tailwind or Elusive Boots. Oh, wait, I just lost half the audience, because that probably costs more than their entire character. What if there's a way to do this, but cheaper? That's exactly what I'm going to talk about in today's video. The Eldritch currencies actually discourage you from using influence mods, and this is a really good thing. It's a great increase in power level to a lot of items that were traditionally overlooked. A rare with 6 good mods just wasn't good enough a lot of the time. And now it easily can be. So if you want to get some elemental ailment avoidance into your build, and you don't want to spend a fortune, here's how you do it. Step 1, you get a pair of item level 86 boots. They don't have to be 86, but I like being able to roll tier 1 Movespeed. Now, personally, I prefer a Dex base because rolling spell suppression is really nice, but it doesn't have to be a Dex base. Although if it's int or any sort of int hybrid, do be careful because the prefixes will be a bit harder to roll. You then roll it with Essence of Loathing. Essence of Loathing because this gives 31 to 35% chance to avoid elemental ailments. Once you start rolling, you'll have a few different options. The first option is you can just hit exactly what you want and call it good. And sometimes you'll get exactly this lucky. But let's say you don't. Let's say, instead, you hit something that has decent suffixes. There's a lot of really good options for suffixes on boots. If we're talking about a Dex base, you can have spell suppression, which is great. Dex, potentially strength if you're on a strength base. These are helpful for fixing attributes and super popular due to crystallized omniscience builds. Of course, resists are always good, or you could even have something like life regen. The fact that there's so many good suffixes means that unless you're super picky, it's not going to be very hard to get something usable. And similarly, prefixes aren't that bad either. If you want to get really fancy, you can do something like suffixes can't be changed and use a Veiled Chaos Orb. This has a very high chance of getting you 30% move speed. Well, that's not too hard either. All you have to do is roll the Deafening Essence of Loathing until you get good suffixes and either 30% move speed, 35% move speed, or a decent life roll. And then you craft the other one on. Sure, 35% move speed's a lot nicer than 30%, but you're probably not going to notice the difference between 35% move speed and 20% with Onslaught, at least most of the time. On the other hand, if you hit move speed, it's really easy to craft 70 life, and 70 life's good enough. Finally, you use Eldritch Ichors from the Eater of Worlds to roll the implicit that you want, which in this case is chance to avoid elemental ailments. Even the lowest tier mod starts at around 15%, which means you get a total of 50 by combining the implicit and the explicit. Now, if you want to get really fancy, you could actually start with this step first, and use Orbs of Conflict to take a tier 4 chance to avoid all the way up to tier 6. This will give you 32% as an implicit, and then you can get an additional 35% as an explicit for a total of 67. Which means if you have a 35% chance on your chest or shield, you'll be completely elemental ailment immune with only 2 mods. On the other hand, if you want to save quite a lot of money and not worry about any of that, 50% should be good enough. If you're on a raider, well, you're completely immune, and if you're on anyone else, you just combine a craft on your shield with a craft on your chest and you're good to go. And if you like this video or found the crafting method helpful, be sure to leave a like. If you want to see more PoE mechanics guides, crafting videos, and build showcases, sub to the channel and ring the bell to be notified whenever I upload. And if you're feeling a bit thirsty for success, try taking a drink from one of my water bottles. Link to my merch shop down in the description below. What I like about this method is it's not super expensive. Now, I am going to talk about softcore trade prices, and these prices may change, keep that in mind. But a boot base is only 4 or 5 chaos, and each essence is about 5 chaos. I've used quite a few so far, crafting gear for my own characters and making a few to sell, or just selling the ones that didn't roll exactly what I wanted, and so far I've found it's about 1 in 10 to get a decent outcome. Now, if you don't mind spending a little bit more currency, you can make those odds much, much higher just by focusing on the suffixes. Because again, if you don't need good prefixes, if you're okay with fixing it later with a Veiled Chaos, or fixing it by using searing exarch currency to influence the item, and then using eldritch currency to reroll the prefixes, more on that in a video I made before, which will be in the card right now, well, then you can do that instead. If you don't mind spending a little bit more on the base item, in exchange for spending a lot less later, you could try starting with a fractured base. Something with fractured 30% move speed, fractured 80 life, or fractured spell suppression will always have that one really important mod, and you can keep rerolling and retrying with essences until you get what you want in the other slots. If you're going to do this, I strongly suggest using a live search, as it can get quite expensive to buy these, but every once in a while people put them up for way cheaper than they should be. So next time you encounter an Eater of Worlds altar that says the enemies have a chance to scorch you, you don't have to worry about your resistances being blown away. You don't need to spend 20x to make a perfect pair of boots, and you don't even need to worry about orbs of conflict and deal with a lot of RNG. I can't guarantee the exact number of essences that it'll take you, but it's not going to be hundreds or anything like that. In fact, for a lot of the boots I made, including boots I sold, the total price to make them was well under an exalt. Now, they weren't perfect, they might only have 60 or 70% total resists, but 30 move speed, 70 life, 60% resists, and 35% chance to avoid elemental ailments? That's a pretty usable pair of boots. Sure, it might be a little more efficient to get something better, but you don't need it. And oftentimes you can save money on things like this, and invest it where you really need to elsewhere in your build. Things that'll make a difference, like using a higher level Awaken gem. So if you've been struggling with elemental ailments and dying a little more than you'd like in maps, and be sure to let me know any of the cool items you've made taking advantage of the new modifiers. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, be sure to put them down in the comments below, or join the Discord, where you can ask questions, get build help, and hang out with the community. A special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members. They're awesome, and they get to show it by having their name on screen in the credits of all my videos. So if you want to see your name here, be sure to check the link in the description. For more general gaming content, check out my second channel, 10 Gaming Thoughts, and if you want a water bottle or a cool shirt, I have a link to my official merch shop in the description. I hope you learned something today, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.